So, sibling fighting. This video is for all the parents who have more than one child, or for parents of singletons and their child has developed a sibling-like relationship with a family member or friend. Sibling fights can be really tricky for adults. They don't necessarily feel good for kids either, but for the adults within earshot, it can be so painful. And I think it's really helpful to start off by thinking about, why is it so painful for you? Are you feeling irritated when you hear them arguing? Are you needing peace and quiet or a break? Are you feeling triggered? Did you have a lot of sibling fights when you were a child and it takes you right back to those uncomfortable feelings? Or is it heartbreaking because, you love these kids and here they are, threatening to hit each other, or maybe they are hitting each other, kill each other. They're making all kinds of threats, and it's really heartbreaking to hear, especially for someone who is into gentle parenting or nonviolent communication. So I don't necessarily think sibling fightings are a bad thing. I think that it's actually potentially an opportunity for kids to develop their skills about, how do you handle a disagreement? How do you work with someone? Or how do you get along with someone when you feel like you're at odds with them? So why do arguments happen between siblings? First of all, I've found that kids who are really close in age tend to get into more arguments. And I think that's because they tend to be in competition more often for resources that might seem finite. So maybe it's your attention, or maybe it's access to a certain toy. But that feeling of competition can really instigate a lot of fights. Sometimes it's personality differences. So if your kids are very different in terms of personality, then you might notice that there are a lot of fights just because they see the world so differently. And finally, I think that a lot of sibling fights happen because they haven't developed the skills, and maybe they haven't seen enough people navigating conflict in their world to have picked up the skills. So giving them the opportunity to figure out how to navigate a conflict with nonviolence and collaboration, I think is such a valuable skill set, which is why I think sibling fights are actually maybe even potentially something to be celebrated, because it gives this opportunity. So now that we've sort of picked apart why siblings fight, I want to share a little bit about what you can do. So we can't change a child's personality, but we can help with that competition piece. So looking for ways to help your child meet their needs on an everyday basis, help them access more strategies so that more of their needs can be met. You're basically filling their cup so that they have more capacity to give, because they're not in this scarcity mode. They feel like, life's pretty good and I can roll with it. The other piece, so you're sort of helping them to access strategies so that they're not showing up to their relationships with a lot of unmet needs. And then the other part of it is detangling an argument. So if you find that your kids are arguing a lot and they're being hurtful to one another, you might find that they're in need of a little extra support. So I'm not a huge fan of jumping in and helping kids all the time. Like, I think kids are actually quite capable. But if you're noticing that violence is escalating in the sense of like name calling or being hurtful or hitting, then I think, yeah, go ahead, they need some support. So I actually want to make a separate video on this detangling process, because yeah, it's long and it's really situation dependent, but I want to give you a quick overview. It doesn't really matter when you start this whole detangling an argument. Mostly you need energy. You need to be in like a really calm place yourself so that you can access that empathy for both sides of the story. Remember, this argument is an expression of unmet needs, a tragic expression of unmet needs, and you want to connect to those unmet needs. So usually when I'm detangling an argument, I start with the child who has the least capacity to sit and listen to the other person's side of the story. And as I'm listening to them, I'm trying to let them tell their story however they see it. And as they're telling it, I'm trying to give empathy. I'm letting them know what parts of it I understand. I'm getting curious about the parts that I don't. That way they're not going to, hopefully, they'll be less likely to embellish their story. They're just really trying to tell their side. And after they feel complete, and you feel complete in understanding their unmet needs and why this fight happened, thank them for sharing. Tell them that you're now going to listen to the other person's perspective, and then, and then we'll bring everyone together and try to figure out what to do next. Hopefully they're able to sit in the same room and hear each other. Maybe that's not your starting point, but hopefully they can. So you're going to do the same process with the other child. You're going to listen, let them tell their entire version of the story until they feel complete and until you feel like you can really understand their perspective. So then once you have both sides of the story, this is why it gets situation dependent. Sometimes the kids have some capacity at that point in time to navigate it more themselves. They just needed help slowing it down so that they could see the other's perspective. Sometimes they actually need help in trying to figure out what to do next. It feels like a real standstill. Again, it's really situation dependent, and I would, if you have a story or a situation that is fresh on your mind as you're watching this video, I would really love it if you sent me a DM so that I could potentially use your story as my example for how to detangle an argument. Because there's other things I could share, but I'm thinking about how nuanced it is, and I don't want to guide anyone down a specific path when another path might have been a little better. So yeah, sibling fighting. I hope that you found this to be helpful. Remember those unmet needs with your kids. Sibling fighting is definitely an expression, tragic expression of unmet needs. So detangle yourself, claim what you can and look after the parts of you that you can. Help your children to access strategies to meet their needs so that they're not feeling in competition. And then also help them to develop those skills so that when they are in arguments, they can navigate them a little better. As you're doing this process, depending where your starting point is, if your kids have been fighting a lot, you might find that it takes a long time to get to a point where you're hearing less fighting. It might still be disagreements. That's human need. Like we're different people. We're meant to have disagreements. But the fighting, that might take a while, just because it takes a while for kids to relax into knowing that their needs are being met, that they're going to be heard, and that the other child cares about them and wishes to be in collaboration with them. So don't be surprised if it takes a little bit of time, but that detangling process and building up those skills, it's sort of like this long run kind of game. It'll work out. The more often you do it, the more often you put in that time at the beginning, the kids really do start to develop those skills themselves, and they'll be needing you less and less. All right, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again and hearing from you. All right, bye.